Hi, I'm Courtney. Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People, the podcast where I interview people living with or affected by sexually transmitted infections slash STDs. Today I'm here with Alexandra Harbushka.
You got it.
Yes, first, second try since we had to redo the recording because the microphone looked weird for a second. All right, so let's talk about you. How old are you?
So I'm 35 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in right now because I know you're going to ask me where I'm located. So right now I'm in Las Vegas,
Oh, and where you from? Let's ask that.
San Diego.
Okay, and you live in.
I go back and forth between San Diego and Las Vegas.
Okay, and what is your career field?
It's podcasting.
Nice. And
Yeah,
the what is your ethnicity?
I'm white.
And what is your sexual preference?
I am straight.
Straight. You gonna piss some people off saying straight.
I don't know. I don't know if it's the right.
we,
I was like,
we,
when you asked, I'm like, I guess, yeah, I'm
your
straight.
your
I'm
sex.
married to a man.
Okay, we can say that. That works. And then damn it, I did this so out of order. But what is your hold on, I know what it is. I know what it is. Oh, and is it a monogamous relationship?
It is
Got it.
very monogamous.
Very monogamous. All right. Now, what is your condition?
So I have genital herpes and oral herpes.
Okay.
I have
And
both.
how
Lucky
long
me.
how long have you been diagnosed?
So I got oral herpes when I was 20 years old. That was in 2003.
Hmm.
And then I was diagnosed with genital herpes in 2011.
Okay. Now, how did you find out? Were there visible signs or did a partner tell you?
Um, well, it was very, very visible. So the oral herpes, I went on a date and my date kissed me after our date at my door, and he had an outbreak on his mouth. And so he kissed me with an outbreak.
You didn't
And
know
then,
this at the time. You realized this in hindsight, right?
no, I knew at the time, and it was one of those things where you kind of go back to, like, oh, good night. And he went in for the kiss. So I got it.
Did he know that it was an oral outbreak?
Yeah.
So he knew, and wait, did he tell you ahead of time, like, hey, this is a herpes outbreak?
No.
It was just kind of there, and he's like, oh, I'm doing this anyway.
He went for it. Yep.
Okay. All right. And so you got that kiss, and when did you start to see symptoms?
About 2 days later,
Mm.
I was 20 years old. I was home from college. It was Christmas break. And I was on my way to go to Spain to do study abroad. And so it was about the week before I was ready to leave for Spain. So I had a lot going on as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal at 20 years old to move to another country. And I was having a going away party, and I was so sick. I was sick, 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 sick. I had the highest fever. I had to go to the emergency room because my fever was so high. I couldn't. I mean, my entire mouth broke out, and we had to cancel the going away party. Um, and I was basically in bed for about a week. It was pretty miserable.
Oh. And so you
Miserable.
had to completely just cancel the party?
Yeah.
Wait, did you have to cancel the trip?
I didn't cancel the trip, but I
Okay.
canceled the going away party.
Okay. And so at this point, well, what was your relationship with the guy who kissed you? Was this just like a first date, or were you friends?
We were friends. He's someone I had known since I was 15,
Okay.
and so he took me out on a date, and yeah,
All right. So you're sick. You're bedridden for a week. You had to cancel your party. I imagine you called him and you let him have it.
I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't tell him until years later.
no
Yeah,
way.
I never tell. Yeah, I now he definitely knows because I had my second oral outbreak 14 years later,
Hmm.
and so
It
I,
took
I
that
got it
long
my
to come
first.
back?
Yeah, it took that long. I never got another one. Which was awesome. I
Hmm.
thought this is great. Like, no big deal. This is not a big deal at all. So when I got genital herpes, I'm like, oh, I'll be on like a 10-year run. No big deal.
Right.
But yeah, it took about 14 years before I got my second outbreak, and it was right before my wedding. And so, yeah, so I was freaking out, and I didn't even know what to do because I hadn't had one in 14 years. Like, I talk about genital herpes daily, and that's what I'm an expert in, but I'm not an expert in oral herpes.
Hmm.
Um, now that remember. I mean, it took me a while to get back to remembering, like, oh yeah, that's that. Okay, I have to do this, I have to do that. Like, I couldn't remember what to use or over the counter stuff or anything like that. It was a completely different situation than having a genital outbreak. But I let him know about the week before my wedding. I ran into the guy. I was like, look, this is from you.
And what was his reaction?
He's like, well, he's like, well, I couldn't resist. I just wanted to kiss you.
Oh shit.
Okay.
That's
Well, now I have this, and I can't kiss my husband on my wedding day.
that hurts. I mean,
Yeah.
well, can I ask you if your husband's positive?
No, he's not.
Oh wow. Okay. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
he's negative for one and two.
Okay. Great. And
Yeah,
you guys have been together for how long?
about 3.5 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, take me back to your diagnosis. So, you're bedridden for a week. Like what's going through your head?
So with the oral herpes, I remember feeling, well, I physically felt horrible. And I remember thinking, well, thank goodness it's not genital herpes.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking,
It's funny because
um,
I had the complete opposite reaction. I was diagnosed with genital herpes, and I was like, "Thank goodness it's not oral herpes. Nobody can see it."
right, well, that's what I've learned. I'd way rather have genital herpes than oral herpes because no one can see it. No, when it's on your face. But here's the thing too: when you have an oral outbreak, people go like, "Oh, that sucks," or like, "Oh, it's no big deal."
It's just a cold sore.
It's a cold sore. It's a fever blister. It's you've been in the sun too long.
It's got all these
Um,
cute names.
yeah, it has all these names. It's not herpes.
Right.
Heaven forbid you associate with herpes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was in bed. I just felt really bad for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I remember I called an ex-boyfriend and I was like, I got this now. No one's ever gonna want to kiss me. And he's like, I wouldn't worry about it. Like, you'll be totally fine. Everybody has it. Just don't worry about it. You're fine. So I remember I felt better about that from
So,
this ex-boyfriend.
this ex-boyfriend, he didn't have it, and he was one of the people who told you, "Oh, it's fine. Everybody has it."
You're fine. Yeah, don't worry. Everybody has it.
Oh.
But I remember I didn't worry about oral sex. Like, that didn't even cross my mind that I'd have to tell somebody with oral sex or um, or kissing someone. I never even realized it. I just thought, well, if I had an outbreak, then I'd have to tell them. And again, I never had an outbreak, so it was never an issue for me. Now, in hindsight, being an expert in herpes and knowing about it and knowing how it's transmitted and knowing that you can transmit it, 70% of transmissions occur without an outbreak. I didn't know that, 22, 25, whatever, when
Yeah.
I was dating. It really is past. That's why so many people have herpes, is because it is just transmitted um, skin to skin.
Yeah. Now, when you say you're an expert, what kind
Yeah.
of expert are we? Are we an experienced expert? Are we a medical expert, or what?
I am an experienced expert. I
Okay.
never wanted to be an expert in herpes.
Uh
Obviously, you don't wake up one day and you're like, all right, this is it.
huh.
I'm going to go be an expert in herpes.
All right, because I
Um,
want to make sure that the listeners know, like, I'm not a licensed therapist, psychologist, or medical
nope.
professional by any means. So everything that we're talking about here is like research, like our personal experience and research.
Correct. Personal experience and hours of research and reading, and then talking to people with herpes, learning about it, studying it, learning their habits, learning what causes an outbreak, asking questions, things
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, and I found that too. And the more people that I talk to about their experience with herpes, the more I come to realize like how, I don't want to say inaccurate research is, but like how skewed it is. Because one of the things that I'm finding is that most people who are living with herpes, having a normal life, who, go on hikes and take care of their bodies, work out, and are dating and like have a healthy lifestyle, these are the people we don't necessarily hear from when these studies are done, when the
Right.
people who don't have many outbreaks or who go on in life and just completely forget that they even have it. Like if and it's not that they don't necessarily, like, they no one has a duty to be like, I have herpes, or volunteer their own experience with this, but it's like the people who are more so in pain or who are angered by it or have some sort of emotional attachment to herpes or have it tied to their identity, these are more of the people that we hear from because they're seeking some sort of healing, they're seeking medical
Right.
treatment or help. And so the talking to people and hearing people say, "Oh, I use this thing whenever I get an outbreak." It's like shit that you wouldn't have even heard of because it's
Right.
working for them. They don't have a reason to try anything different.
Right, and everybody has a trigger that triggers outbreaks. Like I said, we'll go back to oral herpes for me. A lot of people, a trigger for an oral outbreak are peanuts and peanut butter. Um, and I have friends that will have, a Reese's peanut butter cup or a PB and jelly, um, and within like an hour, they'll get an outbreak. Or they'll accidentally grab trail mix, not really be paying attention, and
Mm,
there'll be peanuts in the trail mix, or you fly on an airplane, you get peanuts on an air, you don't think about it, you're hungry, and they get outbreaks. For me, that's not the case.
yeah.
That doesn't trigger it at all. But for some people, that is like stay away, get me as far away as possible.
Side note here. So last night, and I promise I wasn't high. I got back from seeing Black Panther, and I was so hungry. So my girlfriend made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I
Nice.
took a couple bites out of it, and then I remembered I was like, wait a minute, there's Reese's, like fun size Reese's in this bag. So I open up the sandwich and I throw a Reese's in there and take a bite out of it. And I almost cried out of enjoyment because this
Oh
was the
wow.
best thing I had ever thought of. And I get real creative with food, and I'm such a fatty. So like, if anyone can enjoy a Reese's PB and J, I strongly suggest you do it. I endorse Reese's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, if that makes sense. But it has to be
Amazing.
like make the peanut butter jelly sandwich,
Right.
open it up, throw your Reese's in there, take a bite out of it. It's
Right.
amazing. All right, off peanut butter. So, do people don't have to be allergic to peanut butter for this to happen? Is there just some sort of is there something in peanut butter
Yeah.
that
So
triggers outbreaks?
there's lysine and arginine. Um, so they're both essential acids. They're essential amino acids. They're proteins. We need them in our bodies. Um, Arginine is really great for athletes. So if you're an athlete and you take like a sports drink, or you put your powder in it and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, um, it's really good for your muscles. It's good for recovery. It's good for rebuilding, things like that. So nuts and peanuts, specifically peanuts, have their high in arginine. So it just adds fuel to the arginine feeds the herpes. So it's
Oh,
like fuel to a fire for it.
oh shit! I didn't. Well, I knew about arginine. I didn't know what it did. I just knew avoid it,
Yeah,
and that was just the
yeah.
extent of my knowledge.
But it's one of those things. I mean, you need arginine in your body. It's healthy for you, right? You need it. So the way to kind of negate it or to compromise is have lysine in your diet. So high lysine foods, or just take lysine supplements that can
Hmm.
kind of balance it.
And what foods
Um,
are high in lysine?
Lysine would be, so they're vegetables that don't have seeds. So like lettuce, spinach, kale, um, Brussels sprouts, asparagus.
All of this
It's
sounds disgusting. Yeah.
so good.
I'm like, where's the bacon?
So sausage is good for you. It's high in lysine. Eggs, proteins, meat, a lot of fish,
Hmm.
tons of fish. So those are just some things to keep in mind.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But I wanted to go back because what you were talking about is, people they're seeking help, or they're sad, or they're like, what am I going to do the rest of my life? Oh my gosh, I now have this death sentence, right? And what I think it boils down to is we've all been something's been put in our mind of the demographic that has herpes. So we never want to associate with that demographic. So that demographic can be, you can create whatever it is in that mind of your mind of who has herpes. It's someone that looks a certain way, dresses a certain way, has certain activities, that is um, trashy or slutty, or whatever these adjectives are that we want to describe that person. And chances are we don't describe ourselves in that way, right? We mentally don't associate with that icky person that has herpes. And all of a sudden, when we're diagnosed with specifically genital herpes, is really the one that gets people. It's, oh my gosh, I'm now that person, and or I'm going to be associated in that same group of that person, those people that have it. I'm now that, uh, again, whoever it is we've created in our mind that has it, right? I'm now the stripper. I'm now the pimp. I'm now whatever it is that has it. People associate certain, the way maybe a woman would look, that may show more cleavage or whatever. Oh, she must be a slut. Oh, she must have herpes. So now you have the person that dresses complete opposite and going, oh my gosh, now I'm her. And that's, I think, and that's something I really work on. And I say, we all know who Cinderella's Prince Charming looks like. We all know who Cinderella looks like, right? Disney's created those images in our mind. We can picture them without even thinking about it. And we would never think that Cinderella and Prince Charming would have herpes. But the truth is they probably do,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. So, and just to paraphrase what you just said is, in short,
Yeah,
the kind of person who has herpes is someone that we have a negative association with. When we
correct.
contract herpes, we tend to associate ourselves with them.
Correct.
Got it. And so,
Correct.
just because someone has the perfect life or looks perfect or has the perfect and just things going on around them doesn't mean they could not have herpes.
Correct. And we use that in our mind to judge. We'll say, oh, well, look at her or him or whatever, and be like, oh, well, obviously they have herpes because they,
Dot, dot,
whatever,
dot. Yeah.
whatever it is, right? We associate. You can have a different idea in your mind of the person that has herpes than I can, right? And
Right.
before I was diagnosed, I had the idea of who had herpes. I remember I looked at, um, who has herpes, and it was somebody. This was Center of Disease Control or Planned Parenthood. This was in, again, 2011, and it said, not high school educated, lower socioeconomic status, um, and I think demographic, the race was Hispanic and African American.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I'm like, I have a bachelor's degree. I'm in a socioeconomic status of higher socioeconomic status, and I'm white. And I was like, I am not this person. And it really shocked me.
Yeah. And that just goes to show the role that the stigma plays into it is
Yeah,
because, okay, now I know just being an African American male that we tend to not want to, identify, like, that's a sign of weakness, just being in a race or a minority race, having any sort of physical or medical condition at all, or even like psychological issues, like we don't want to talk about that. So we tend to just put it off or push it off or ignore it or whatever. And so like that, to see that or to understand that the statistics are minorities, lower income families, that's the kind of person that has herpes. It's like, I mean, how
and
true
it's
is
not.
this? Yeah.
And that statistic is no longer out. Like, I
Hmm.
can't find that anymore, so it's been changed, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, because everybody has herpes, and not, I mean, not everybody, but everybody's been exposed to herpes at some point in their life, and that's something I also like to get across to people. Is especially when I'm coaching and things like that, is they'll say, well, I'm scared to kiss someone, or I'm scared to tell someone, or I'm scared to have sex with them, or whatever. And I like to get that point across that the person you are telling that you have herpes, they've already come in contact with it at some point in their life. They've picked up a beer can at a party that someone had an outbreak and they sipped out of it. They've kissed a family member that has it. Your grandmother kissed you, or some, you know what I mean? Like, not when I
Yeah.
say kissing
Well,
together, I don't mean incest.
no, no, I know what you mean. So, like, I don't want to generalize and say everybody has come into
Right.
contact with it, but
Yeah,
we
I
can
think
say
I think we have.
like a good number or a lot of people, but I don't want to say like everybody, every actual human being is coming into contact with it. And then as far as the beer can goes, so we're talking about skin to skin virus.
Correct.
I'm having an outbreak. I drink out of a beer can and I pass it. So what
Yep.
are you saying that herpes is transmittable from active outbreak, beer can, passing on to someone else. They drink out of a
Right.
beer can. They can
Right.
contract herpes.
It has to be active, right? It has to be like really active. It's one thing if like you take a sip, put it down, come back an hour later. I doubt the virus would still be active at that point. But it's more of like here's a sip, let me pass it.
Mm-hmm. Sip,
You
sip,
know,
give.
that type of thing.
Okay.
Or kissing. So I have a friend that was drunk at a bar and walked up to the wrong guy and kissed the wrong guy and ended up with an outbreak because he had an active outbreak. And
Oh
I'm like, that
shit.
sucks. Like you kissed the wrong guy. She goes, yep.
So now, even in your experience and talking to people, have you encountered anyone who, like, what's in what is it, asymptomatic shedding?
Uh huh.
So if let's say I do have oral herpes and I'm not having an active outbreak, I drink out of a beer can. Someone else follows up with me drinking out of the beer can. Are the chances lower? Are there any statistic that you have found that
I
show
don't have any
transmission?
statistic of that. I do know that 70% of transmissions, I mentioned this earlier, 70% of transmissions occur um, without an outbreak because of asymptomatic shedding.
Got it.
Um, I have a lot of people that are like, I don't want to share things with my kids. I get worried. I don't want to take a bath with my kids. I'm worried that I'll spread it. And I think it boils down to you have to live life. You can't live life as this. I can't touch my body.
Yeah.
You gotta you need to. Chances are passing it asymptomatically or something like that because you are sharing a beer or whatever. I just think you can't go there
Mm-hmm. Now,
personally.
I came up with a question and it escaped me right away. But in your experience, the people who let's see, I forget how I don't necessarily know how I want to word this, but uh, as far as transmission goes, um, you said 70% are asymptomatic. So the other 30 are like visible
No,
sores.
70% of transmissions occur without an outbreak.
Okay, they occur without an outbreak. Got it. And is this just orally, or are we talking
Everything,
overall?
genital as well, and that's really what gets to my biggest pet peeve, and really the reason why we have herpes or we have genital herpes is because we weren't educated and we weren't taught because the original message was, hey, if you're not having an outbreak, you're good. Like,
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
Uh huh.
And don't talk about it. Don't mention it. Use a condom. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that's not accurate,
Yeah.
right? And so 70% of the transmissions have occurred because somebody didn't have an outbreak but didn't have the conversation with someone that said, hey, I have herpes. Here's what I'm doing to prevent transmitting it to you. We're going to use a condom. We're going to take the antiviral, whether it's Valtrex, cyclovir, whatever it is that you choose to take, and that's what we're going to take. And I want you to know. And here's typically where my outbreak occurs. So we're going to do what we can to prevent either coming in contact with this area or not. That's my other biggest pet peeve. If people go, well, I'll just use a condom and I'll be fine. Well, it's skin to skin as we're talking. And so there's areas that a condom doesn't cover, right? With sex. And there's things that, and the other thing is people think, well, if I just use a condom during sex, it's fine. But we forget about foreplay. We forget about after sex. We forget about, any type of touching. Like you can spread herpes from any sexual activity, oral sex, anal sex, vaginal sex, hand jobs. You can pass in any capacity of that.
So I shouldn't masturbate and then like rub my eye.
Correct.
So,
Right.
I caught myself one time. I was like, and I just like used back of
Yeah.
my forearm. I was like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
uh, so I keep getting a question. Oh, okay.
Oh.
It's
Oh.
about testing. So when you say a lot of people have come into contact with the virus at some point in their lives, I'm wondering, so you can probably talk me through this. I recently was in a conversation with someone about how the test results work, and I remember getting tested for herpes before I had tested positive for herpes. So I remember the chart specifically stating that if my level, the numbers that were assigned to me were above a certain number, then I was positive for HSV1, another one HSV2. And if they were under a certain number, then I was negative. So I ended up being under for both of those tests. On both of those numbers. Now, mind you, I was in college, I was playing football. I had just recently gone to the doctor because I was like, this looks like herpes. And it didn't look like herpes, like in hindsight now. But I gone to the doctor and she just told me it looks like you've been extremely busy. Like it was some form of chafing or something. So I was like, I don't believe you. So I went on, I got the $140 test at any labs, and those were the results. And it said negative, so I assumed negative. Here we are all these years later, and now that I'm talking to more people and reflecting on that day, I found out I was positive. It was 6 years ago now. Yeah, about 6 years ago, and I think about some of the things that were going on. So at that point in time, numbers were present. It's not the fact that, like, what gets me now is that there were numbers present. If I was negative, I feel like those numbers should have been zero. Like there's no
Right.
sign of herpes in you. But because there were numbers on that test, herpes was in me. So maybe the fact that I was playing football and I was always running, I was always lifting weights, I was always on the move, my metabolism was sped up. And then all of a sudden, I graduate and I go to being a lazy sack of shit who doesn't want to work out or run at all anymore. All of a sudden, that gave herpes the opportunity to emerge visually. So I'm wondering, like, if my immune system just stopped because of the lifestyle change all of a sudden, and then herpes had been there the whole time. And it's like, rawr, here we go, jumps from behind the counter and gets my ass. So I don't know. Have you spoken to anyone, or do you, in your experience, have you seen anything like that at all?
No, I've heard a couple of people saying I've been in a monogamous relationship for X amount of years and now I have herpes and I don't know how I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think in general most people's initial outbreak is you're sick, like whatever you have the flu-like symptoms. I mean,
Yeah.
you're really sick, and physically for genital herpes. You can't sit down. It hurts to wear pants for a woman. Obviously as a man you're going to wear pants, but like you want to wear dresses. It hurts. You don't want anything confining. I mean, it's a very painful experience. I find it very hard when um, I'm like, how did you not have your initial outbreak that put you in the hospital? I mean, it's very painful. But I think there are just some people that either it was very mild, so we didn't notice it,
Hair
or
bumps. It looked like an ingrown
we
hair.
yeah, or we go, oh, there's no way I have herpes. It's an ingrown hair, or I nicked myself shaving, or I sat down on something funny and I have a bruise, or whatever. I got caught in the zipper, or whatever.
Oh,
We make up.
that whenever someone says getting caught in a zipper, like I have that instant
Yeah,
reaction every time.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I
So
mean,
we
the reason that I just wanted to ask is because like I know I'm not alone in this. I don't know too many people who have gotten tested for herpes before they tested positive for herpes, but I was definitely one of them, and it just seemed so odd to me that there was the presence of something, but I was considered negative. So it's like same thing with chickenpox. Chickenpox being a form of herpes. Okay, you had chickenpox, you've had it, and now it's gone, and it shouldn't come back. But the fact that you had chickenpox means that this form of herpes is still inside of you. So it's
right.
like, is there gonna ever be a point where people with type 1 and type 2 are gonna like have parties for all their kids to get type 1 and type 2 together? Because like that's what happens with chickenpox.
Chicken
Like
pox,
my mom
right?
wanted me to get chickenpox when one of my friends was exposed to chickenpox so that we could get it over with. So it's
Right.
like, is that the reason that there's a level of herpes inside of me, or these are just questions that I play with? Like I have no
I don't
intention
know.
of researching this because it's just going to take too much time, and I'm a lazy person when it comes to research. I'd rather just talk to people who have had their experiences. And I mean, I'll go and fact check some things like the percentages that you threw out. I'm gonna, just for the
Yeah.
sake of writing the content onto the podcast, being a credible resource. But I more so like to hear from other people to understand what they've experienced as well and share that with the listeners because there's so many different perspectives, and like on the spectrum you can have the most intense outbreak or you can have no symptoms at all for, would you say, 14 years?
14 years, I didn't have an outbreak.
Yeah. Okay, so what about your genital HSV? Let's talk about your junk.
That was pretty traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was dating someone that I had known for a long time and trusted, and um, we didn't have sex for a really long time, and then it was one of those things of like, all right, we should probably do this.
What's a really long time for you?
Like a year.
Okay, that's a really
It was
long
a long
time.
time. It was a long time, yeah. So okay, we should probably do this. We should try this out. We should see if this is where we want to go. And so we did. And it was about 2 months into sleeping, 2 months after the initial sleeping together. So sleeping together for 2 months, I came down with herpes. I was diagnosed with herpes, and he didn't have an outbreak. And all of a sudden, I realized I was in so much pain. I was in tons of physical pain. I couldn't sit down. It hurt to wear jeans. This was 4th of July, the week before 4th of July.
You are emphasis. You are like infamous for getting sick at the worst times.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, so I got that, and I had my annual physical. I don't know, like Tuesday of the week, like Tuesday or Wednesday ish. And I remember Sunday night I was coming down with herpes, not knowing it was herpes. Because I would never get genital herpes in my mind, right? And the guy I was sleeping with would never have it because he didn't fit the profile in my mind who would have it. And Sunday night I started not feeling well. Monday I didn't feel well. Kind of started noticing some things going on. But I'm like, oh, I'll wait. I have my physical on Tuesday or Wednesday. Now I can't remember what day it was. But you're like, oh, it's so close. I'll just wait another day. And when I went into my gynecologist, she said, well, it looks like a really bad yeast infection. I don't think it's herpes. And I said, okay, whatever. So she did some swabs, and she went and looked at it under a microscope as well. I was like, that's kind of cool. But she didn't think it looked like herpes. And so Friday before 4th of July, it was still a work day because 4th of July was a Monday that year. So we had Monday off, not Friday. So I remember I was driving to an appointment. I was in mortgage at that time. I was in sales, so I was out a lot. I was driving, and I got the phone call from my doctor, and she said, yeah, I have to tell you, I don't want to tell you this, but you have genital herpes, and I'm really sorry. And I said, well, could this come from somebody previous? Because I had been previously tested before sleeping with this guy, and it was negative. And I said, could it be someone previous? Could it have been dormant in my system for a long time? She goes, well, it can be, but you were negative, before.
Right.
And typically the transmission or the percolating time, I guess, the time for it to show up is about 2 days to 14 days. So it was within, we had gone away the weekend before. So I got it that weekend, and here it was Sunday. And, that I came down with it. Now Friday, I was diagnosed with it. And I remember being, like, literally, when you turn white, like, all the color rushes out of you.
I have absolutely no experience with that. I'm just messing with you. I understand what you mean.
You lose the color, yeah. I remember I, lost my color. I was just, like, shaking, and, like your entire, everything that you ever thought was going to happen in life, my hopes, my dreams, my dreams of falling in love, my dreams of career goals, my dreams of all of that was gone.
Isn't it funny in hindsight to think how ridiculous that was? Like,
yeah.
How is having herpes gonna, like, fuck up my career? How is herpes going to, keep me from finding the person who I'm supposed to be with, or people I'm supposed to be with? And in reality, whoever it is that you're supposed to be with is gonna either have it or be okay with it, and your options become limited. And a lot of people go instantly into, oh shit, I have herpes. Now, like, an important part of my identity is now gone. Now I can't have free sex or one night stands anymore without that guilt, or having to tell someone and then be rejected. Nobody likes being rejected. And so that's immediately where we go.
Right, absolutely. And the thing is you still can have a one night stand. You still can meet the person that's you're gonna fall head over heels with and spend the rest of your life with. You know, you can find Mr. Right, Mrs. Right. Like they are out there. You can still have one night stands. I just say you need to tell someone. You know
Hmm.
that's the important thing to do. But you
Yeah.
should have been having that conversation regardless before.
It's so funny because I didn't start having to talk until after I was diagnosed. Like, the extent of the talk before sex was, "Are you on birth control?" Yes. Okay. Cool. And
Good to go.
that just goes to a lack of sexual education. For me, well, not a lack of, but it was more of like it was unproductive sex education because everything that I learned was like, this is what an STD is, or these are signs of STDs. You don't want them. So, like, if everybody doesn't want an STD, then clearly no one's gonna have it. And if you do, you're just not gonna have sex.
Right.
And the extent of my um, education in terms of avoiding STDs was always wear a condom. And I didn't always wear condoms, but at the same time, like, when you do something and there are no consequences, you think you can continue to do it again and again and again, and then all of a sudden you wake up with flu symptoms and aches and chills, and you go to the doctor and find out, oh shit, I have herpes. So at
Yeah.
that point, it was like, I don't want to experience that again. Like, let's have this conversation. So it's completely ass backwards that now, it's all right, when's the last time you were tested? And nobody wants to
Right.
kill the mood or anything like that. But I find that now having that talk and being open and honest about communicating my sexual health with potential partners, even before I was in a relationship, um, it made the sex better. Like, there was trust there. Like, there was
Right.
more. I think that is a very large contributing factor to, like, good sex. And I know that sex itself is not the topic of this podcast. We're more so talking about sexual health and herpes, but it's
Right.
important to understand that open and honest communication about your status, your partner's status, and the use of additional protection, condoms, whatever it is what's going to decrease your chances of contracting or spreading an STD just by being informed.
And yeah, and communicating with your partner and saying like, hey, you know what, I kind of feel a tingle and I want you to know that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's up to you. Like I'm announcing it, and it's up to you what you want to do.
Yeah.
Or you know what, I have an outbreak, I can feel it. Or you know what, or whatever it is, wherever you are on that in that conversation, it's having that open and honest conversation with your partner. Like you said, it creates for a better sexual experience. You're connected. The person who has herpes can be like, you know what, I disclosed it. It's now up to them. It's their choice.
Yeah.
I'm not like not telling them, and
Yeah.
then ooh, like just you can let your conscience go. You cannot worry about it, and that's what I've had to do. Because with my husband when we first started dating, I'd be like, well, I don't know, I'm worried, and what if he goes, if that's on your mind during sex, then we shouldn't have sex. Like you need to get that out of your mind
Yeah.
because it's not on my mind.
Yeah, and like, it just changed how I viewed sex, because it's not just
Right,
like herpes is physical, and that's one of the blocks that keeps you from being physical if you're not open about it and you're hiding that. Whereas, like, the connection and being vulnerable and able to talk about the fact that you have herpes, which is such like a traumatic thing or a negative thing, depending on where you are about it, being able to disclose that information, share that with someone, and they accept it, or make the decision to still move forward with you because you're worth that risk,
right,
just deepens the level of connection and intimacy.
right, right.
So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it boils down to just education, like just knowing what it is.
mm-hmm.
I've talked to so many people now, obviously talking about herpes, people that I like in passing or over a cocktail, and they go, "Oh, what do you do?" And I go, "Well, this is what I do." And so then they ask me questions about it, and I've had so many people tell me that, like, "Oh, I broke up with someone because he had herpes or she had herpes, but I have oral herpes." And I'm like, "So you have herpes and you broke up with someone because they had herpes?"
What I don't get is, where do you think this comes from? It's not like you get genital herpes, like, okay, let's say everyone had cold sores on their mouth, and then someone started to perform oral sex, and some more and more people did oral sex. Like, if that's the origin of herpes,
Yep.
why isn't it the fact? Why isn't cold sores like the devil of this situation? You know, it just baffles me. And like, I've always played with the idea in my mind. Okay, where did herpes even come from? Like, what started herpes?
So
What was the first herpes?
I spoke to a professor or a scientist at Salk Institute and at University of California, San Diego. So Salk Institute, obviously we know polio, Jonas Salk, so they have a big institute there. And so I reached out to a viral specialist,
Ooh.
and I just, first of all, it was the funniest thing because I'm not a science person. I didn't ever want to take science. I took the minimum required to ever just to graduate college or whatever. Like, it was not my thing. Did not take chemistry. Like, did not want to get into OChem or any of that. So when I was talking to this virologist, that was a hard one. He was using all these big words, and I was like, whoa. You need to. This is kindergarten. I need to. I
Yes.
need to break this down. Like, I'm about sixth grade level of science. We need to break it down so I can understand. But anyways, he said that herpes has roamed this earth as long as anybody with any living being with a vertebrae. So herpes is in every species. Anything with a vertebrae has their own strain of herpes. So it is something that we've lived with for however long the earth has been on, however long the earth has been here. We've had herpes, and it continues to get passed,
You're
and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, you were trying to drop your mic a little too soon.
I was trying to drop my mic, yeah.
uh, that's interesting. That a lot of the thing it's always been here, and it makes me wonder. Like I'm real big into exploring like different ideas of spirituality and like how that plays a role in our physical body and all of that. So to say, I'm wondering if it's well now that you say that, I'm wondering if it was something for our bodies to use for a reason, like a redirect. Because I'm seeing
Yeah,
now, I had a redirect when herpes became a physical thing, and I had to like explore, okay, what's going on, and experience these life changes. And once I made the changes, it was like, okay, how do I know I'm on the right track? Oh, I'm not having an outbreak, so I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed because things are going well, or are things going well because I'm not stressed, whatever the case may be. But it just
yeah,
seems to be like if all of these things just tend to happen to our bodies, and if the virologist is correct in that statement, this is something that will emerge in the lives of people who just need to re uh, reevaluate things going on in their lives.
something. Yeah, and I agree with you on that. And I wonder if on some level, I love history and I love reading about history and learning about history and all that. And you go through the eras of courtesans, or you go through the eras of
What
nations.
is that? What is that?
So a courtesan is it's a pretty word for prostitute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Oh
so
my God! Wait, say it again.
courtesan.
I'm gonna start using it.
All right. So it was in Italy where they had courtesans, um, and it was acceptable, and all the aristocratic, wealthy men they all had courtesans, and then go to the houses where it's a brothel, but it's courtesan. That's what they call.
Hmm.
So you wonder that they obviously all had to have herpes. Like they had to, right? That you think the cleanliness back then, you think we had the plagues back then, and you wonder if it was a big deal or not.
Yeah.
And it probably wasn't
It was probably like
because
a joke, like, oh man, I hooked up with Suzanne. Oh, you too? Me too.
yeah,
Yeah, now I'm itching. Oh shit, me too. Like it was just a
right,
running theme because everybody hooked up with Suzanne. But then you think like, now Suzanne's the problem, and everyone's pointing the finger at Suzanne, where like you have it too. Yeah,
right.
my mind just goes into like these infinite spaces of potential events. So I'm gonna shut up and let you finish.
No, you just wonder at what point, because oral herpes doesn't have the stigma that genital herpes does, and
Hmm.
you wonder at what point it really became this. People. it's destroying people's lives, right? And it shouldn't. And it's
Right.
not that big of a deal. And it's just a silly little virus. And, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. So you better get to know it,
Yeah.
right? It's the one thing I can guarantee that I will die with.
Yeah.
It will be with me forever.
Friends to the end.
Yeah, exactly. So I better get to know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make my body as uncomfortable as it can for the host. I
Yeah.
don't want it to be comfortable.
Right.
I want to have a healthy body
Mm-hmm.
so that it doesn't pop up all the time, and it's not that big of a deal in my life.
Yeah. I wonder, we're kind of like herpes for the planet because we keep populating and stuff and like killing it and stuff. Like if we take care of it, I don't know. Like how,
Right.
like if it were, if we were to think about it like that, like it's just there. Like if we take care of it, it'll take care of us.
Right.
So I was asked a very interesting question by a newfound friend of mine,
Yeah.
and she asked me, she goes, if herpes could speak to you, what would it say?
Ooh.
So I want to ask you that now.
If herpes could speak to me, what would it say? It would tell me that. So I look at my herpes as a way to regulate my body. So if I'm stressed, guess what's going to pop up? If I'm tired, guess what's going to pop up? If my immune system's down, guess what's going to pop up? If I let something else happen exterior in my body, or exterior into my life that stresses me out, guess what's going to pop up? So I would say that my herpes is kind of my friend that goes, okay, Alexandra, you need to take a nap. Or you know what, Alexandra, you're really strong right now. You can go for it. Like go to the gym. Like go the extra mile, whatever. Like you can do it right now. And I use it as a measurement to say, yeah, you know what? Maybe you should cut back on the sweets
Mm-hmm.
because I can feel your body doesn't want the extra sweets or the In-N-Out burger or whatever it is. So I think that my herpes virus tells me it wants to be a part of my life, and you can't ignore it. Um, it's like saying, oh, I don't want to have this hand in my life. Like, you can't ignore your hand.
Right, right.
It's part of my life. My hand's going to be with me forever, I hope. Um, and
Your
I
hand and
think,
herpes, the two things you're gonna die with.
right. So I think that my herpes virus just tells me, like, it kind of reminds me of what I need to do to keep myself healthy.
Yeah, and well, I don't know if you said you like to read, right?
Yeah.
So there's this book called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz.
Okay.
And one of the things that he talks about in the book is he uses this analogy of the how the brain is a goal striving organism. So mentally, our bodies, as long as we're striving for a goal, we're good. And with our minds, if we have a goal in mind, then it's like we're on a bicycle. And as long as we're pedaling and moving towards that goal, we're not going to fall off. And then falling off is kind of where the stress formulates. And then obviously the stress leads to your body telling you that you're stressed in all these different kinds of ways. So I just thought it was interesting that you said that, too tired or you're energized and you can do, it's like herpes is telling you stay in the middle. Like don't
Yeah.
overdo anything, don't underdo anything, but more so straddle the middle of the line for what your body is capable of doing.
Right.
Got it.
Exactly.
All right. Was there anything that you wanted to touch base on about your HSV1 or HSV2 before we talk about your
Um,
podcast?
no, I mean I have it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. I actually am grateful that I have it because it's allowed me to help other people, heal other people. I believe it's truly my gift. We all. I feel like your gift finds you. You don't go find your gift, or your purpose finds you. You don't go seek your purpose. And this is what found me, and I'm grateful and thankful that I have it, so I can change the world with it.
That's awesome. I like to say, life really isn't about what happens to you, it's about what happens through you. So,
Right.
herpes was the thing that happened to you, and you were able to reshape it and use it as your gift and your tool to impact the world around you. So,
Right.
thank you for that. Tell me about your podcast.
Yes. So I love it. So started my podcast. It's called Life with Herpes. I launched it in June 2017. And before that, I had a different podcast. It was Sex, Money, Food. And I was at a podcast conference, and I was asked to speak about self love. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll talk about this, or maybe I'll talk about that, or maybe I'll talk about. And my husband was like, what about herpes? And I was like, no, I'm never going to talk about herpes. What are you talking about? I'm like, no, I should talk about whatever. I came up with, he's like, that's really not that compelling of a story, Alexandra. You're not going to get anybody with that one. If you want to get someone, you got to talk about your herpes. He's like, but only if you're ready. So I was like, fine, I'll do it. And so I talked about it February, so a year ago, February 2017 at a conference, and I mentioned having herpes. And when I talked about it, three things happened. I had people coming out of the woodwork saying, I have it too. Thank you for sharing. I had people saying, wow, I don't have it, but I didn't know anybody that had it or has it. And thank you for sharing your story. And three, I had people saying, wow, I need to share my story too, whether it was herpes, whatever their story was. And it said, wow, I need that same courage to tell my story in my business because it will help people. And so when I realized that, I thought, okay, this is bigger than me, and this is bigger than, me trying to keep a secret or whatever, and I need to do it. So that's how I launched my podcast. But it has absolutely transformed into something bigger than I could ever imagine, and just the ability to help people and create a community and work with people and talk to people and hold their hands and all. I mean, it's amazing.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I am really appreciative of the work that you're doing. Um,
You too.
and like that was one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on here was to like, hey guys, there's another one.
Yeah, there's no one else.
And like I think that it's really important for the people who I've recently, I go back and forth between statements. I say a lot of different things that are all hopefully going in the same direction. So
Right.
I never want to make contradictory statements. I always want to make sure that they're at least consistent. So one of the things that I was saying is that like there are a lot of people who are in the darkness about having herpes and their condition and thinking that they're alone, and for you to be somewhat of a lighthouse. Like it took a lighthouse for me to find me. Like I saw the lights, like, hey, what's that? Oh shit, somebody else with herpes. Let me get closer to that. Let me be there. And then they were able to direct me to all these awesome resources that were
Right.
like local interest groups, communities, support groups, just dating groups, and just social fun groups of people. And it took me 5 years to find any of that. So it's awesome that you're, that lighthouse that's put yourself out there for people to find you, and you're able to point them in the direction of these resources as well and let them know that they are not alone. And
Right.
that's just such an important thing, and it's empowering for people because for me, I remember where I was and how things were for me when I was first diagnosed, and when I became single after being diagnosed, and it was just like, fuck, this is the
Yep.
worst thing ever. So to have you be out there about it, everyone can't do this. And I've talked to people recently who've just been like, yeah, I'm in a certain type of career, I have a family, like more people like us who are in a position to be able to do this and openly discuss our condition, and who happen to be surrounded by people who support us and don't necessarily, care or judge us for the fact that we have herpes or that we're talking about it. Like it's important for us to be able to be accessible to everyone else out there who doesn't know that these resources are available.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
And yeah, yeah, you're right. I was gonna say I don't think I've really come across too many negative people about it. Have you?
no. The worst thing that happened to me, I disclosed to a girl. She told me she had asthma. I was like, oh, yeah, well, we all have our flaws. I have herpes. So, like, I compared herpes to asthma, and, like, that was the worst thing that's happened is that she just
What'd she
ghosted
say?
me. She just ghosted me. This was through Tinder. So, we just stopped talking, and that was that. But Other than that, I mean, similar experience here. There was an article. I did an interview with an article here in St. Louis, and the article didn't come out for like 4 months, and I had honestly forgotten about it. And then one of my clients that I trained, she sent me a text. She's like, "Oh my God, this is awesome!" And my heart dropped because no one who I trained knew that I had herpes or that I was even doing the podcast. I was very low key and secretive about it. And shortly after she did that, I think that that's when it hit me. I was like, okay, it's really selfish of me to try and keep this thing like secret. Like I'm doing the podcast, I'm uploading, I'm posting to the places where it's safe, where I don't have to reveal
Right.
my identity. And like that's what I was doing for a while. And then once that happened, a few people shared it, and I was just like
Yep.
hyperventilating and shit, and was like, oh, it's not that bad because just like you said, people reached out and were like, "Oh, I had no idea. I have it. So and so. I'm dating someone with it, and I don't." All of these things started to come up, and even people who had other STDs would come out, and I've gotten a few podcast guests out of it. I've been able to direct other people to resources, and it's just really, it's very fulfilling to be able to help people in that sense. And then I'm finding that even in doing the podcast, I'm learning so much myself to be able to teach someone else.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, so it's awesome. And it doesn't consume too much time. Like for you and I, we talked yesterday, and here we are now
Yeah.
interviewing. Like we're doing the podcast together. So for us to be able to just take this little bit of time out to talk and share this conversation with the world, hopefully it makes someone who is negative more likely to date someone positive or be open to being disclosed to or help someone to disclose or share information
Yeah.
and details about their own personal experience. But I find that your podcast, it looks to be a lot more fact and research based. You are at 70 what episodes right now? Last I looked it
I
was
think
78.
80 something.
Oh,
I
you're
don't
in the
know.
80s.
I don't.
Okay.
I. You know what? I don't know. You know how you do them all and then you kind of like you
Yeah.
record them all at once or whatever, and then you put them up there and then they release on their own schedule. So I
Right.
don't. I don't know.
I didn't even know that was a thing. You have an auto release? I have to do all this shit myself.
Yeah, I have an auto release.
Well, yeah, you're way ahead of the curve than me. Like, you have your website up. I just bought the URL to something positive for positive
Nice.
people so that I have it, but I've done nothing with it over the last. I think I started. Yeah, we started in May, and I was like, shit, I better buy this logo. And or not the logo, the URL. So I've
Yeah.
just been paying Google $5 a month for it and haven't done shit with it. So
You got to do it.
I know, but it's just it takes time, and I'm
I know.
essentially working two jobs and doing this like as a hobby. So we'll see what happens. I might just have to pay someone to do it.
Do it. Get
Will
it done.
do.
Get it up there.
All right. So where can people find you on social media?
You can find me. So you can go to. Okay. Well, my website is lifewithherpes.com. So you can find a lot of resources there. And I'd like to gift your client or your clients, but your audience a coaching
Oh, okay.
session. So I'll send you a link for that, Courtney,
Yeah.
and then so you guys that are listening can get a free coaching session if you want to talk about herpes.
Yeah. What's the coaching? What's the coaching about? I thought you just did the podcast. I didn't know that. Well, you mentioned coaching, and I was like, huh. And then when it
Yeah.
came up again, it's like, well, what are you coaching exactly?
So there's basically four things that I've found that are really when you're diagnosed with herpes or you have herpes, these are the four things that really trigger us, and I know they triggered me, and you'll probably agree. So it's understanding what herpes is, understanding what uh, what is in your body, how it's affecting things, what you need to do to prevent outbreaks, how you need to prevent passing out or transmitting it to somebody else. Then we have the how do I tell my partner? That's a really big thing. How do I tell my partner that we have herpes? And then the other thing that's really huge is how do I start dating?
Yeah.
How do I start dating and get back on that horse? That's a lot of what we talk about, and then ways to prevent outbreaks holistically. So that's usually what we go through in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do there. So I'd love to gift a session to your listeners.
All
So,
right.
guys, go to Life with Herpes, or I'll give you the link. How's that, Courtney? I'll give you a link
Yeah,
for your
just share
account.
the link with me and I'll put it in the show notes and
Perfect.
share it with everyone. But I think that's important for people to understand, like starting the date, because
Yeah,
you can really fuck it up in the beginning,
right.
as I speak from experience. So to be able to coach people through that point is definitely going to be something that the listeners are going to be able to find valuable. So yeah, just send me that link. I'll share it in the show notes, show
Perfect.
description,
So
and
you
we'll
can go
be
to
able to go from there.
lifewithherpes.com, or you can find me on social media at Alexandra Harbushka.
You have
Or
to
if you
spell
just,
that.
I know, right? So, well, you can just, if you type in herpes, I usually pop up. But
Okay,
my last name is Harbushka.
got it. All right.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to say to the peeps, all our heaps out here?
Just don't let some silly little virus that's microscopic rule your life. You're way bigger than that.
Yeah, you're way bigger than herpes is. Like you can
Yep.
literally, you have to look at it under a microscope sometimes. So
Yeah.
be bigger. All right, guys, this concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People with Alexandra Harbu. Ah, damn it.
Harbushka.
Alexandra Harbushka from the Life with Herpes podcast. If you like this episode, or even if you didn't like this episode, feel free to leave us a review and rate us. I mean, you can, I'd prefer you give us 5 stars anyway, but still let us know what you thought. She can be found on social media at her name, which I'll just type out in the show notes so that it's consistent. And check out that free coaching session and see how you
Yeah.
like it. I mean, there's nothing to lose. It's free, and it's if you're gonna be doing this research into this newfound herpes lifestyle, might as well talk to someone who's got a lot of experience with it. I can be found on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr. I'm even on Reddit at H on my chest. I'm just my real name on Facebook if you want to add me there. I tend to not send messages to or add people first just because a lot of people don't want to be associated with the podcast just by the name and what is happening, and you don't want to be associated with having an STD. So completely understand. But this is more so becoming more of an educational tool than anything else. So if you stuck around this long, please be sure to stay tuned for more sex education, sexual health related podcast episodes. I've got something in the works now, and I'm looking forward to getting that out to you all as well. Till next time, stay positive.